Section 2 of Clara A. Swain, M.D., by Mrs. Robert Hoskins. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Larry Wilson. The Nawab's Gift. The need for a dispensary and hospital became daily more imperative, and it was opportunity met in the munificent gift of the Nawab of Rampore, who owned an estate adjoining the mission premises in Bareilly. The Hon. Mr. Drummond, the Commissioner of the Northwest Provinces, was interested in mission work, especially in the effort to help the women of the city and neighboring villages through medical aid, and he agreed with the missionaries that the Nawab's estate was just what was needed to carry out their plans. He therefore arranged that Mr. Thomas should go to Rampore and in a personal interview represent to the Nawab his desire to procure a portion of his estate in Bareilly, which adjoined the mission property, for the purpose of establishing a hospital for women. Accordingly, on receiving an introduction that the Nawab would receive them, on October 8, 1871, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas and Dr. Swain set out for this momentous interview. An interesting description of this visit was given in Mrs. Gracey's book, Women Medical Work in Foreign Lands, and in Dr. Swain's book, A Glimpse of India. Mr. Thomas's carefully prepared Hindustani speech was not finished before the Nawab replied graciously, "Take it, it is yours. I give it to you with great pleasure for such a purpose." Mrs. Thomas naively wrote, "We were so amazed at the readiness and graciousness of the gift that we nearly forgot to make our salams and express our thanks and gratitude." The Nawab replied that there were two great merits in this gift, one for himself and one for Mr. Thomas, for taking so great an interest in the charitable work. Mr. Thomas then asked permission to found the first hospital for women in India in His Highness's name, to which he replied, "As you think proper, so do." So His Highness Mohammed Kalub Ali Khan, Bahadur Nawab of Rampore, has the honor of making the first generous contribution toward founding the first woman's hospital in India. His Highness again expressed the satisfaction he felt in bestowing this gift, and said he would send his general to Bareilly on Monday to make out the papers and put us in formal possession of the property. Before the party left the Nawab's dominions, the ladies were asked to see a sick woman in the Tahsildar's house, and they found her very ill indeed. Dr. Swain prescribed for her and for several others who asked for medicines. Then they returned to the rest house to get their breakfast and talk over the interview, and to thank God for His great bounty to the mission work. Mrs. Thomas wrote, "We were bewildered and overwhelmed to think that the possessions which we had longed and prayed for these many years were ours. The gift came to us so freely and in such a way that we could take no credit to ourselves for having obtained it. Like all God's free gifts, it was given before asked for. No persuasions or arguments of ours would have made any difference. God saw our need and supplied it." The estate consisted of 40 acres of land, a fine old koti or mansion, and an extensive garden. The house needed repairs, which were soon completed, and Dr. Swain and Miss Sparks, who had been appointed to take charge of the orphanage, moved into their new home January 1st, 1872. A part of the house was used for a dispensary until other arrangements could be made, and then followed busy and often weary days, borne with patience, however, for the work was for the Master. The much needed and well planned dispensary building was completed in May, 1873, and the hospital buildings connected with it received the first indoor patients January 1st, 1874. From that time on there was no lack of occupants for the rooms. In the published collection of her letters, entitled A Glimpse of India, Dr. Swain gives a graphic picture of the buildings, their occupants, and their mode of life. Visits to homes in the city were continued, and Dr. Swain and her assistants were fully occupied every day. 3 of the graduates of the medical class were employed by Dr. Swain as Bible women, and gave much assistance in the religious work connected with the hospital. First Furlough. The anxiety and the responsibility of the rapidly increasing work brought weariness of mind and body, and in March, 1876, Dr. Swain returned to America for a much needed rest. This was extended to the autumn of 1879, when, on September 25th, she again sailed for India, arriving in Bombay November 6th. At the conference held in Cawnpore in January, 1880, Dr. Swain received her appointment to Bareilly, and with gladness of heart took up her old work. Physician to the Rani of Khetri. In March, 1885, Dr. Swain received a call to a native state to attend the wife of the Rajah, and after 2 weeks of successful treatment, she was formally requested to remain as physician to the Rani and the ladies of the palace. After much thought and prayer, it seemed to her that it was the Lord's will that she should remain and do what she could for him in this place where there were no Christian influences. So she consented to the proposal on condition that she and her companions be allowed to carry on the work as Christians should. To this the Rajah agreed, and Dr. Swain signed a contract to remain 2 years. In the Blue Book, or Administration Report of the Khetri State, 1886, the Rajah wrote: "I cannot look back with greater pleasure or satisfaction on anything I have done than on the facilities introduced by me for rendering medical aid to the female portion of my subjects. It is a patent fact that the Indian woman, secluded as she is within the 4 walls of the Zenana, cannot fully benefit by any system of medicine." And it was not till the generous efforts of Lady Dufferin were turned in this direction that the wives and daughters of the richest and most enlightened Indians enjoyed a better position than the lowest and meanest of their fellows. It therefore gives me genuine pleasure to bring prominently to your notice the existence of a regular institution in this benighted portion of India, for the treatment of females of all classes. I have employed a very competent European lady doctor, Miss Swain, M.D., to attend on Her Highness the Rani Sahiba, and, feeling it my duty to place her advice and assistance within the reach of all my subjects, have established a regular dispensary for women. It was opened June 1st, 1885, at the expense of the state, and a room in the palace building appropriated to it until a more convenient and suitable one could be provided. An allowance of 100 rupees per mensem is fixed for medicines, and is found for the present to be sufficient. The average daily attendance at the dispensary is 5. Under section 12, Schools, this report is given. I am glad to say that the people of my state are beginning to evince greater interest in the education of their children than they have done before. The greatest desire of Her Highness the Rani Sahiba was that I should make suitable provision for the education of girls. I accordingly engaged a competent European lady, Miss P. E. Pannell, as mistress, and the Khetri Girls' School was opened by Her Highness in April, 1885, in the teeth of opposition from the orthodox portion of the community. As was expected, at first every effort to teach these girls was frowned upon and considered absurd by their relatives and friends. This feeling, however, gradually gave place to trust and confidence, and the school is now showing some return for all the time and patience spent upon it. The number of pupils on the roll is 20, of which 3 have gone to their Susval (husband's home), and 3 attend only occasionally. The average attendance of 14 girls has, however, been regular. Great pains has been taken to teach truthfulness, honesty, and love for one another. Instruction is also given in needlework of various kinds, and other things the knowledge of which is necessary for good housekeeping. The improvement made by some of the girls in this direction may at once be noticed by a change in the manner of doing nicely the little things which go to make up their lives. The school owes its existence to the care of Her Highness, who is much interested in it. In addition to her school, Miss Pannell was engaged to teach the Rani and some of the court ladies. Dr. Swain and Miss Pannell were the only Christians in the state, but their little Sunday service conducted for their servants gained attention, and others asked to be allowed to attend. some becoming so much interested that they procured Bibles and Testaments that they might read the wonderful words themselves. A supply of tracts and portions of Scripture was always on hand to distribute whenever and wherever the ladies felt they would be appreciated. Second Furlough. The serious illness of one of Dr. Swain's sisters decided her to return to America, and she left Khetri on March 1888, having spent nearly 3 years in "seed sowing," as she called it. Her own health, too, demanded a change, and in company with a most congenial missionary friend, she turned her face toward the homeland. She returned to India in company with the same congenial friend in time to attend the North India Conference before going to her Khetri home, Miss Pannell again accompanying her. Return to Khetri. The isolation of their life in Khetri had been at times a great trial to both Dr. Swain and Miss Pannell, but they felt that they were where God wanted them to be and bore their privations bravely. However, at this time Dr. Swain wrote: "After 18 months of the religious life of America and the many precious privileges enjoyed there, it seems harder to settle down to the life here. I miss the church services much more than I did when I was here before." At another time she wrote: "I have sometimes felt tempted to give up my work here, but then the thought comes to me that I can do more by remaining here and paying the salary of a native preacher to do what I should never be able to do." A second princess had been born during Dr. Swain's absence from Khetri. This occasioned close attendance at the palace, as the baby was delicate, and Dr. Swain had an opportunity for Bible study with the Rani, who enjoyed nothing more than an hour of daily study of the Scriptures. The older princess, too, was ready with a new Bible verse every day, and a Sunday service was held in the Rani's apartments, at which the women of the court and their attendants were present. The Sunday Bible class at the home was not neglected. It increased in interest and numbers, some of the more intelligent of the Rajah's staff occasionally joining the company and listening with interest to the hymns and the reading of the Scriptures. The birth of the prince and heir in January 1893 was a time of great rejoicing and much ceremony. Offerings were made to the deities day after day, the poor were fed and presents given to the Brahmins. The Rani acknowledged her thankfulness to God by a donation in the name of her little son to Christian work, asking that the money be used to support an orphan in the mission to which Dr. Swain belonged. Trip through Europe and the Holy Land. Dr. Swain's engagement with the Khetri State expired in October 1895, and in March 1896 she left India, as she supposed, forever. Mother Nindi and her traveling companion, Miss Baucus from Japan, were among the missionary party of 11, some of whom were anticipating a trip to the Holy Land. In company with Miss Baucus, Dr. Swain visited Jerusalem, where they were joined by Miss Dickinson of Utica, New York, and the three traveled together from April 1, 1896, to July 4, when they sailed for America. They had visited the places of interest in and around Jerusalem, Bethany, Bethlehem, on to Beirut, Damascus, Baalbek, Nazareth, Tiberias, and the Sea of Galilee, a tour much enjoyed by them all. At Jerusalem they met a company of Americans and arranged to accompany them to Constantinople. On the way they stopped at Smyrna and made a hurried trip to Ephesus, arriving in Constantinople May 20th. There they remained 6 days and then sailed for Athens. On June 2nd they began their European tour, sailing on an Italian steamer to Brindisi, where they parted with their American friends. The three then visited Venice, Munich, Dresden, Cologne, and Paris, reaching London June 27th and remaining there till July 4th, when they sailed for New York. "No more sea for me," was Dr. Swain's reply when asked if she were not tired of travel. "I took many rest days while the others were sightseeing, and now I hope to have a good long rest here at the Castile Sanitarium." To India for the Jubilee. But to the great surprise of many of her friends, and notwithstanding the remonstrances of some who feared she would not live to return to America, she determined to go to India to attend the Jubilee of the Methodist Mission, founded by Rev. William Butler in 1856. In company with some missionaries under appointment to India, she sailed from New York November 6, 1906, just 37 years from the time that she started out on her untried career. She spent 18 months among old friends and old scenes in India, rejoicing in the great advance in numbers, intelligence, and spirituality of the native Christians, and had the great pleasure of meeting again the young Prince of Khetri and his sisters, now orphans, and of hearing from them of their mother's last days and of her continued love for the Bible, to which she had given so much attention while Dr. Swain was with her. At home in Castile. Once more she turned toward the homeland, arriving in Castile, New York, in April, 1908, where she was joined by the friend of her early missionary days in India. Dr. Cordelia Greene, who established the sanitarium, was succeeded by her niece, Dr. Mary T. Greene, who arranged that the two friends should occupy rooms in her lovely cottage, Brookside, opposite the sanitarium grounds, where for nearly 3 years they enjoyed the comforts of a home and of congenial society. Though living outside the institution, they took their meals with the sanitarium family, and took part in the daily morning prayer service in the helpers' sitting room and after supper service for patients and guests in the large parlors, enjoying to the full the spiritual atmosphere of the place. There were quiet hours of delightful study in the Book which each had made the guide of her life, social afternoons with friends from different parts of the country and from over the seas who were taking a rest time in the lovely village, and pleasant evenings before the cheerful grate fire in Dr. Swain's room. These were made more heartsome one autumn because of the presence of a much esteemed missionary friend, Miss Knowles, from India, and Miss McFarland, Dr. Swain's dear friend of Canandaigua days, who had come to spend a little time with one whose companionship had always been a pleasure, and whose correspondence during her absence from America had been a delight. A glimpse of India. Relatives and friends of Dr. Swain had carefully preserved many of her letters, and Dr. Greene, who had long desired that these letters should be published, conceived that the favorable time had come, and urged the immediate preparation of the work. The letters were read, extracts made, compiled, and edited, and in the summer of 1909 A Glimpse of India was given to the public. This furnished a most interesting record of the busy life of the first medical missionary to the women of the Orient. As long as Dr. Swain was able, she attended the Sunday morning service and the Thursday evening prayer meeting, as well as the meetings of the missionary and the ladies' aid societies of the church. When she was no longer equal to the walk to church, she and her friend had regular Sunday morning service in their room with hymns, scripture reading, prayer, and a sermon, and were often present in spirit at the midweek prayer meeting, though their prayers and praises were uttered in their room. The last year of her life. The last year of Dr. Swain's life was spent in much weakness at times, occasioned by an attack of grippe which would not be overcome. But it was not until the first week in December that she felt that she could not hope to get stronger. When confined to her bed, she kept her Testament and Psalms near her, and though seldom able to read more than a verse, she enjoyed the daily morning Bible reading and prayer with her friend. Loving attendance and the best medical care were given her, but naught availed. An early Christmas morning, while sleeping, she passed from earth to her Father's home above. She was laid to rest in the beautiful cemetery at Castile, December 28, 1910. The prayer of the frail little mother of a frail little daughter was fully answered in this good and useful life. End of Section 2. End of Clara A. Swain, M.D., by Mrs. Robert Hoskins.